I try to speak with as many entrepreneurs as I can. When I raised money, a lot of people gave me advice, and the advice they gave is impossible, right? Don't do it. Don't try it. You're gonna waste your time. If you want to raise money, you have to move to Silicon Valley. And I'm one of those that entrepreneurs is just stubborn.
Hey, this episode is brought to you by the outstanding team at Compass Strategic Advisors, your trusted partner in driving strategic growth. Whether it's expanding into new territories, launching products, rebranding, or hiring key staff and board members, they offer the expert guidance every step of the way. With a versatile approach and a proven track record, Compass is the go-to resource for both startups and established companies looking to scale with confidence. Thanks, and show your support for this podcast by sharing some sponsor appreciation. Check these guys out at www.compass-strategic-advisors.com. Now I get to welcome Louis Derechin to the podcast. He is the CEO of Nir-Yu. I like how you pick names that phonetically are just so easy. Nir-Yu, well, of course, that's a great offshoring company name, but you spell it a little differently. Niryu,
Correct.
because people want to check it out on the website after we're done talking. Of course, it'll be in my show notes, Luis. But give us a sense. You started this company because you saw a major problem. I mean, when we are working on a startup and we need to hire talent fast, we need great people, and it's hard to get them in the U.S. We go to different places. Sometimes we think about Eastern Europe, sometimes we think about Asia, and sometimes we think about Latin America. What is your story? Why do people fail in some of their efforts in terms of picking a partner, and why is Mexico the right place to go in, specifically through your organization?
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me, Keith. It is a pleasure and an honor to be able to chat with you and have your audience uh, listen to some of the knowledge that you and I will hopefully together distill. So, to answer your question, I first have to give you a bit of a background. So, um,
Please.
born in Mexico many eons ago, but raised in Southern California. So, sort of that bicultural vibe. And then we would cross the borders often, right? So if you wanted, a bad example, but if you wanted hamburgers, you'd stay in the U.S. But if you wanted tacos, why go to Taco Bell, right? You'd head for the literal border, cross the border, and then have tacos in TJ. So we went back and forth for many years, and then I moved back chasing a girl when in my early 20s, and lived in Mexico for a while. And then in the early 2000s, I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. I won't bore you with all the details, but in the early 2000s, I founded a tech company that became Mexico's first tech startup to raise U.S. venture capital funding. And then I moved back to the States. And I'm giving you the backstory because when I got to the States, I had raised a few $1 million, and one thinks that, $3-4 million is going to last them a lifetime. But then when you start looking at the wages involved in hiring talent in the US, and this is early 2000s, mind you, right now it's even worse, you sort of realize that, you have to pick and choose which people you can hire initially in your early stages. And because we wanted to have a fuller team, what we did is we hired key positions in the US, and then we hired other people to support those key positions in Latin America. It was easier to hire, it was less expensive to hire, right? Less competition for the talent. So we started hiring in Latin America to support US operations. After a while, did that in India as well. So I was part of the company for 13, 14 years until its acquisition. And then after the acquisition, I started getting phone calls from other CEOs in the area that knew what we had done, and they were telling us how their offshore or nearshore projects had failed. So they wanted our help. So that's sort of how I got into this business. I didn't get into it in a strategic plan. I started getting called into gigs, right? Consulting uh, opportunities to help people sort of write an unsuccessful attempt. And just to finish up, realized after many of these that there were some common pitfalls. So we started figuring out how do we target the pitfalls involved in the failure, and started a company in order to do that. And today we offer the ability to hire people in Latin America using what we call the remote intelligence framework in order to be able to raise success from 27%, which is what the statistics show, to 95% success rate.
You know, I'm one of those people that have found it challenging to do successful offshoring. So I completely relate to your experience, although I've worked in dozens of companies now as a consultant and employee, and I've seen it be successful as well. I'm not sure I figured out the right way to do it. Maybe you'll educate me. But first, let me fill in a couple little blanks, if I may, Luis.
Sure, sure.
First of all, the best tacos are definitely in Mexico versus California. I feel like I spent a lot of time in San Diego, hence Mexico.
Yeah.
Sometimes I didn't recognize there was a border back in those days, and had so many great experiences. I'm so proud of what you accomplished. I spent a lot of time in DF and other parts of Mexico and learned a lot about business. But I always applaud silently when I see a Mexican entrepreneur raising money. You raised a lot of money for when you were doing Jackby, the successful BI company that you exited. And that's what was it, 40 million you raised?
Yeah, it was around 40 million. Uh-huh.
And to have a successful exit and then to continue that success, I'm sure you continue to enlighten other entrepreneurs, as you said you were doing, and sharing your experiences with them.
So first of all, back to the tacos thing. So yes, no, no doubt, the best tacos are in Mexico. However, you have to understand Mexico is a big country, right?
Yeah,
And 135 million. So if you were to make that blanket statement, anyone would say, all right, so carne asada from Tijuana, pastor from, Mexico City, carnitas from Puebla, and you'd have to get a
granular.
lot granular in order to do
We'll
that. But
have
yeah,
a food show next time. You and I. We'll talk about it. You and me will play Anthony Bourdain on our show.
tacos and beer.
There you go.
All right. So, um, to the comment question that you mentioned. So, I try to speak with as many entrepreneurs as I can. When I raised money, a lot of people gave me advice, and the advice they gave is impossible, right? Don't do it. Don't try it. You're gonna waste your time. If you want to raise money, you have to move to Silicon Valley. And I'm one of those that entrepreneurs that's just stubborn. And I was able to do it. And because of that, I feel like, 13, 14 years of battling in the US market sort of gave me the arrow marks or the whip marks involved in battling every day, where I feel that I must give back to the entrepreneurial community in Latin America. So every time I'm asked to speak, I do it. I've been asked to speak at, believe it or not, entrepreneurial courses in MIT, University of Maryland, a bunch of places where there's a high Latino concentration
Can
exactly
I
for that.
point out also you have an Amazon bestseller?
Yeah, that's recent. I'm incredibly proud of it. Yeah, you can see the smile, right?
Right.
Uh, it's on. If it's not, it should be on everyone's bucket list, right?
Good.
When you sit down in front of a computer, text editor, and trying to put your thoughts together, you sort of realize that your thoughts aren't as deep and they have to go deeper, and then you realize that they're too deep and you have to simplify them. And it was a 1 year process. Rewrite it or rewrites 3 times, rewrote it 3 times.
Of course.
But yeah, we're very proud of it.
You had a
Thank you
good
so much.
editor. Let me dive into it then, because again, I have a lot of entrepreneurs watching the show, and I will share this with them. Help me define the proper way to bring on an offshoring partner. What are the best steps to do? What are the things you must avoid?
So let's go to the avoid first, or
Okay,
or what.
sure.
And the reason why I say let's go to the avoid first is because in when I started doing the offshore consulting, realized that there were some common pitfalls that signified that people were falling into the what we call the offshore team death trap. And when I mention these, Keith, it's going to none of these are revolutionary. These aren't things that you would say, I can't believe that, this person did it, because there's situations that are sort of you fall into them by following common sense. Let me explain what I mean. So, uh, the first pitfall is what we call the talent mirage. So, if you're a US company and you're hiring based on your US experience, you're going to, give people the same trust, the same level of comfort, the same everything. But ultimately, a lot of time, skills don't necessarily translate, so you end up hiring someone that you thought had some skills and didn't have exactly the skills, or they look strong on paper on the resume, but just, when the proverbial rubber hits the road, they weren't there. Second one is cultural chasm. If you hire someone that hasn't worked with the US company, and you don't give the person the right onboarding and integration, then there's going to be a cultural shock that will may make that person not be successful. The next one is what we call the hidden cost spiral. If you don't know what you're getting yourself into as far as all the costs that are involved in hiring, or you hire a company to help you sort of pick and then choose and then pay the person, and you're not transparent about what the costs are going to be, the savings may not be as big as you thought they were going to be, and it's not going to be successful. Management quicksand. You have to realize that when you hire people remotely, and even more when it's crossing borders, there has to be certain processes in order to make sure that you're not spending too much time managing them, right? And because if not, then it's a time suck for you, and all the effectivity or efficiencies that you thought you were going to achieve, again, disappear. Next to last is the retention revolving door. Similar to what you said, you tried to be successful and then you weren't, so you let the person go and you try it again, and then it just goes on and on and on, and you're never able to build that company knowledge, right?
Boy,
Because
those all resonated with those raft of experiences I had. I could almost feel each one. They were like, "Oh, you got me on that one. Oh, that was that company." Yeah, those things are real, and you don't even start to evaluate them on that basis. The integration and how much coaching this
correct.
person left. Oh, that person was really good. Oh, and they go, "Oh, who else is new?" And now I got to train them.
And the worst part is these aren't, even though they can exist in the individual, they
Hmm.
tend to stack on top of each other,
Oh,
Keith,
yeah.
right? So, because of the cultural chasm, we hit the retention revolving door, and with that, the quality erosion, starts happening. So yeah, what you indicate is absolutely real. These are real things that happen 73% of the time. These are responsible for 73% of failures, or,
Yeah.
or for projects being not being successful 73% of the time.
So if I'm hiring near you, I'm going to get success because how do you solve those problems then of the integration, the retention, and maximizing the efficiency to create that great cost savings? Okay, on the front end, I got a great deal because it was X% less money. By the way, give me a little indication of how much we're saving hiring in San Francisco today or remote US for engineers and managers versus what I'm seeing now in LATAM or Mexico specific.
Um, so I'd say LATAM across the board. R Wages tend to be very similar, Argentina to Mexico to Colombia. There isn't much difference. There are differences in the type of skills that you can find and whatnot, but the cost difference tends to be LATAM will cost you about 30 to 35% of what a very similar role will cost you in the US. So, if you look at a Java engineer with 8 years of experience in the US on average, San Francisco may be higher, but in the US on average, and then compare it to the same type of developer working out of Latin America, it'll save you 65 to 70%.
That's beautiful. Okay,
Yeah,
great.
huge.
Now to avoiding those problems.
Yeah, so to what you said, let me first clarify one thing. So I appreciate that. Yes, if you hire Nir-Yu, my company, we are going to do some things, and I'll walk through things, follow a framework that will allow you to be more successful. But we touched on giving back a few minutes ago. So because we believe very strongly in being transparent and giving back to the community, it's not only near you, right? With near you that you can be successful. What we actually did is in the book that I published, we explain the 7 components of the death trap and why it is that you fall into them or that people fall into them. And then we go through what we call the remote intelligence framework. And by following the remote intelligence framework that's also explained in the book, you're able to achieve success. Remote is an acronym, rigorous talent selection. E for expert onboarding and integration. M, manage support and services. O, optimize team performance. T stands for transparent cost plus pricing.
Okay.
And E for enhanced scalability and growth. So if you follow the recipe, understand what the different letters mean, how you can do this, how by executing on the different topics or the different letters in the remote intelligence framework, you can be more successful. That's how you achieve much higher rates than 27%. And I'll say we at NirYu have proven 95% success rate. So it's proven to be successful.
Fantastic. I have to ask, of course, about AI. We're living in such an AI. So there's a question of hiring AI talent. How is Latin America keeping up in terms of upskilling? They're from the university side, from the exec side. How much is it being deployed? And how much are you seeing in terms of demand there? And gosh, we could go one step further, Luis, and talk about how you're using it yourself within your organization, if that's appropriate.
It is absolutely. So, first of all, what is the rollout or how is AI penetrating the Latin American market? And this is a global phenomenon. I mean, the
Truly.
the reality is that the large model providers are providing it all over the world, and we're seeing positives and we're seeing negatives. The negatives are, and not only in Latin America, but I'd posit, India, so Asia, and then Eastern Europe. You're beginning to see that a lot of jobs that potentially would be farmed out are now being what's the word I'm looking for, are now being done by artificial intelligence, right? A lot of junior coding jobs, right? So today you have senior coders that are using AI as, their literal hands in order to program. And because of that, the architects and senior engineers are supervising and correcting code. Whereas before, it would be that senior person with a team of 4 or 5 engineers doing all the coding. But how is AI taking over? The answer is no. It's just being used very differently, and it's being used differently in Latin America as well as in the US. Having said that, I'll state that Latin America tends to be 3 to 5 years behind the US. So it's not cutting edge, even though the technology is cutting edge and the uses are growing. The reality is that there are no large AI companies in Latin America. In fact, this week I just heard of a company that's deploying AI in the industrial sector, and it's a Mexico City, San Francisco based company, right?
Mm.
So they're getting talent, I guess, from San Francisco and then deploying it in industrial scenarios here in Mexico, and by doing that, getting the best of both worlds. But so because we tend to be 3 to 5 years behind the US, I haven't seen a whole lot of AI being used as companies or LLMs, native LLMs. Everyone says that they're using it. The governments claim that they want to get sort of on the AI track, but the success cases or the use cases aren't very visible for the moment. And then as far as how we use AI, we're using AI for marketing, right? We're using AI for interviewing. We're using AI for sourcing. So for us, AI is another tool that are talent acquisition specialists or vetting specialists or people who do the testing of the people who were recruiting of all of these aspects, and our marketers go crazy with it because if you want volume, then AI is the best way to be able to market.
That's perfect. Okay, well, it leads me to another question because is that part of the formula you have for your 21-day program? You have a 21 day.
Uh, I don't remember the 21 day, Keith. My apologies.
Oh, the 21 days without the traps.
Got it. Okay. Now I understand. So yes, I mean the ability to, for a few weeks, go without it's like anything, right? The first thing you got to do is admit you have a problem. Once you admit you have a problem, then you have to realize what the problem is. And
Yeah.
then the best way to correct it is you have to be conscious about not falling into the components of the death trap. So yes, the we have on the website for the book, we have a workbook that sort of walks you through how do you find the pitfalls? How do you
Right.
identify them for you? How do you make sure that you're not falling into pitfalls? And repetition, like anything, breeds success, right? If what you're repeating is good, and that's where the 21 days comes in, right? If you can go 21 days creating awareness for you not to do those things, then you start to see that success.
I like that. The other question I have that's similar, I'm thinking of like I have one company, right? They have 10 people. And there's a new thought within the valley that that's all you need these days, right? Because you have all these agents doing all the other work. But I have 10 people, and I'm in the physical AI world where I'm building things. My AI is attaching to robots, it's attaching to cars, it's attaching to about a lot of different things. Um, where do we start to think about hiring offshore? At what stage when you have that management layer settled and you need more development, more, give me your idea of when you counsel startups is when it's time to consider looking for that offshore talent.
That's an excellent question, and I'm seldom asked that. So I appreciate the nuance that you're looking for. So in order to answer your question, we have to sort of go back in history and see how was offshoring started. And it was started in the 90s, right? 80s, 90s by large companies who wanted to lower cost and had that managerial level and had the processes in place in order to be able to do it. So because of that they could sort of offshore entire processes, right? And then have people do them offshore and then sort of spit them back, send them back. In today's world, and as you said, 10 people are doing what 100 people used to do.
Right.
So the fact that you're asking people to do more, to be more effective and to be more efficient is important because the structures, the processes, that management layer tends to be uh, put in place at companies earlier. So to be precise in my answer is you want management, you want culture, right? And then you want some processes in order to be able to have people work remotely. Because, and this is very important, if you have people working remotely, and it's not only in Latin America, even if you're a Silicon Valley startup and you have people working in Austin or in New Hampshire or in Oakland across the bridge, but they don't come into the office, then what you need is to have processes in place in order for your culture to be in order for it not to be accidental, right? You need it to be defined and for you to be able to bring someone in, integrate them, onboard them, make them feel part of the company, understand what the company's about, what the processes are. So I would say that you probably, if you're a solopreneur and you're not looking to scale greatly, then bringing on people who can do repetitive tasks is one easy way to offshore. But
Mm.
what you were stating was a little more involved because you were saying a company that is doing AI, putting it into hardware. So for that, you probably want the company to be a bit more mature with that management process and then start bringing on people so that they can be far more effective in the way they help.
Yeah, it occurs to me that maybe the epidemic had some small benefit in that it prepared companies to handle remote workers better, and that you can assimilate multiple cultures in that same workflow.
Yeah, yes, yes, no doubt. The pandemic created a fertile ground for people who were managing others to realize that just doing it over Skype, even if you're in the same city or over Zoom. I said Skype. God, I'm old. So
We do date ourselves. That's okay.
yeah. So doing it over
I could go
Zoom.
back to AOL, so you're safe with Skype.
Yeah. Yeah.
How about CompuServe? Do you go? No, you don't go that far back,
No,
huh?
no, I don't go that far. But I still remember that you got mail, right? The
Yeah,
AOL.
exactly.
So back to what we're saying. So people realize that having someone on the other end of a screen, even
Yeah,
if the person was in the same city, you have to be far more organized and far more determined to make these things happen. Because communication isn't as easy. When you're working shoulder to shoulder with someone, right? You can you realize, are you screwing it up? Right? No, 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 that's not the way I want you to do it. Whereas if
yeah,
you're doing it over Zoom, you have to wait until the person delivers something, and that's
yeah,
when the conversation begins. So it's similar to prompting, right? You've been mentioning AI a lot. Think about the framework, right? So rigorous talent selection. You have to make sure that it's the right agent, right? Or the right model. Expert onboarding and integration. And then optimize team performance. Be able to tell them how are they going to be measured. Make sure that you measure them correctly and that there's a feedback loop. So it's 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 very similar, right? Again, because people are going to be working remotely, you have to make it far more, uh, uh, far less accidental.
hmm Great. I want to make a quick pivot to talk about you, the entrepreneur, and the things you learned that you didn't expect to learn on this amazing journey you've had growing your first company in the business intelligence space, and then pivoting to the recruiting space, uh, the process of raising money, the process of hiring, kicking something off the to start, selling your first product, the founder-led selling motion, uh,
Oh
building
my God.
teams, managing teams. You seem like such a natural entrepreneur, and I know you are somewhat serial and started multiple businesses and now advise people. What are the things that surprise you most about your startup journey, and what are the things that um, I don't know, were the things that really upset you or surprised you?
Yeah, as you were mentioning all those things, I was getting PTSD, right? Uh, Keith, any entrepreneur that's been through this for many years or more than once has, again, we're all pioneers, so we have the arrows, right?
Oh
That
yeah,
were brought into our back. Pioneers ultimately are, uh, you sort of suffer the consequences.
right. Picture Mel Gibson in Braveheart.
Correct.
Okay, but it's hard also. It's
It,
very time consuming and you're on an island, you feel alone a lot. But how do you adjust? What is it that you experienced that was kind of special to you?
so I think the three huge
Okay.
lessons for me. Number one, most entrepreneurs think my idea is the killer idea and I have to protect my idea at cost, at all costs, right? I remember the first time I was sending my pitch deck to a VC and I said, I'm going to send you it, but can we sign an NDA first?
Yeah.
And the guy says, are you kidding me? You have any idea how many pitches I look at? And I didn't realize it at first, but the lesson is, yes, ideas are important, but execution is 90 to 95%. Ideas are a dime a dozen. right? I would be incredibly surprised. As innovative an idea that any of your listeners can have, I will bet you 100 to 1 that at least five other people have the same idea in different parts of the world at the same time. So what'll differentiate the person or the group that is successful? Execution. That's it. That's my first lesson. Second lesson, entrepreneurship is not a solo sport. It's a team sport. Even if it's a team sport, just a couple of people in order for them to provide support to each other, you've been through this, I'm sure, Keith. The highs are the highest you have ever experienced. But how low are the lows, right? You come out of a meeting where a potential customer basically says, "Yeah, I don't get it. I don't understand what you do." You were going to the meeting thinking, I'm Jack in the Titanic, right? I'm the king of the world. And then you realize that the Titanic hit an iceberg and it sunk, and now you're floating in the Arctic Circle. So the ability to weather to be humbled during the highs and then to be lifted off the ground during the lows, that's part of the team. That's part of team spirit, part of team sport, and it's not surprising that nowadays VCs are investing more in 2 and 3 person founder teams than one founder teams because they want this. And then lastly, I think the biggest lesson again, and it has to do with the previous two, is the most difficult thing in entrepreneurial life is product market fit.
Yeah. PMF.
EMF. Absolutely.
So hard.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And then
And
so hard to recognize it because sometimes you feel like, okay, I sold a couple. I have product market fit. And you
yeah.
go, well, wait a second, that's not exactly the proper benchmark.
Or you sort of have product market fit in a market, and then you realize, yeah, but this market is 10 people big, right? So
Yeah,
it's
not as big as I thought, or
back to the drawing board. And now
yeah. I
I have
need
to
I
do
need a
another.
new TAM analysis. Well, I totally agree with you though about the team point. I mean, it stretches. Let's stretch that analogy because you play, and then you go, I got to play to win, and then you start to define what winning means, and then you're lucky enough. It's one of those, single digit percentage companies that come out of venture that actually win and find some kind of exit, hopefully a big one like you had. We play to win, and then that win becomes addicting.
Oh yeah.
I got to do it again, or I got to find my way to get attached to that. And it's just so fun and so addicting. But yeah, I think it's great. You mentioned words like ego. You gotta make sure that people have the right balance and how they look at um, the failures that are come along the way. That key hire left, that sale fell through, your board rips you something, so, not special. And so you have all that frustration that just comes with the territory.
Yeah, yeah, I think that famous business philosopher Mike Tyson said, right? You have a perfectly laid out plan until you get punched in the face.
Yeah.
And that's when the real fight begins, right? So to what you said, I don't know any entrepreneur that goes into starting a company or just a solo effort and goes into thinking, well, I'm going to be mediocre and I'll just sort of fly by the seat of my pants and see what I get out of it. All
Yeah.
of us think I'm going to be the next unicorn. I'm going to be the next winner. As you said, you play to win. You play hard. You know that it's going to be 12, 16-hour days, 6, 7 days a week, and you're determined to do this. And then, boom, as you said, the market hits you in the face. And
And
that's when the real battle begins, right?
let's get going. You're right. Um, well, listen, we're going to wrap up. I've taken way too much of your time already, but I do want to ask you. I'm somewhat familiar with the entrepreneurial ecosystem in Mexico. I don't have depth of knowledge though, but just from my standpoint, what can we do to help support more entrepreneurship in Mexico across Latin America? that um, that will just benefit. I know there are government issues and there are tariff issues and all kinds of other nonsense at a macro level, but let's talk about what really happens here. We just got to deal with that, how we deal with that. Um, any thoughts?
Sure. So first, I'd actually say I believe that entrepreneurship is more prevalent in Latin America than it is in the US. And I know that that's sort of counterintuitive, but
Yes.
let me briefly explain. So the type of entrepreneur that when I use the word entrepreneur pops into your head is very different than what pops, what I'm trying to convey when I say the same thing in Mexico. So you have to
Yeah.
understand. Mexico, Argentina, Colombia, all of the countries in Latin America, because of all the typical economic boom and bust cycles that they go through, people have jobs and then they lose them, and then they have a company and then they lose them. They're way more accustomed to fending for themselves. So, whether it's the store in the corner or the person that's selling, out of the trunk of their car, tacos or tortas or whatever just to make a living. To me, those are entrepreneurs. And because of that, it's way more prevalent because it's the opportunities are harder to come by for, meaningful jobs
Yeah.
in Latin America.
Yeah.
But if we sort of put that entrepreneurship to the side and go at the, how do we build companies with the ability to scale, grow, and potentially exit, which is, I think, the what you tried to convey when you use entrepreneurship. Fortunately, it's growing. There are far more colleges, universities that are teaching this. The fact that the world is flatter, right? To mention the book, has made it so that a lot of younger people are seeing the success in other places, whether it's Denmark, Sweden, the US, India, and they want to participate in that. So the hunger is there. Universities have, because of that, started dealing a lot more in entrepreneurship. I remember in the early 2000s, I would go to Mexican universities to, sort of talk about what we were doing. And I'd say, how many of you here are looking to start, your own company? And out of a room of 40, 50 people, maybe three or four hands would go up. I did the same thing about 10 months ago. I went to the Tech de Monterrey and and I was giving a talk and I asked the same question. And I was surprised to see exactly the opposite. 45, 46 hands went up and they all wanted to start their own company. So the mindset is shifted. And then lastly, there's more VCs, there's more funding, there's more angels, and there's more people, like me that have gone to the other side of the border, so to speak, live that, and then come back, or from afar, be willing to provide the experience and the expertise.
Luis, thank you. This has been great. I wish we could go on longer. We could talk about so many more things, but you've given us a great lesson in terms of hiring. And NirYu sounds like it's on a great roll. So success, continued success. And
Thank you. Yes.
it's been
I,
fantastic.
I, I I appreciate the opportunity, Keith. I'm sorry. I think I jumped in too soon. My apologies. But as I said, it's an honor. It's a pleasure. If there's anything that I can do for you or any of the listeners, please on LinkedIn, look for me, Luis, spelled the Latino way, Luis. My last name, Derechin, Derechin. DM me there or email me. You can find my email.
I'll drop it into the show notes for my listeners. That'll be up in a week or two. And listen, we have a couple agenda items to follow up on already, including I got to take you to Al Pastor Papi, my food
Okay.
truck turned restaurant in the Bay Area. I got to get down to Mexico and have a look at your operation, and then go off to one of your favorite watering holes, perhaps.
Looking forward to
But
it.
I look forward to seeing how this whole evolution goes with the staffing, what's happening, the offshoring challenges, and how those get corrected. Just a lot of fun stuff. And then finally, maybe we could be part of an ownership team that can bring the Oakland A's or another franchise that you love. Maybe a new Maybe we just move the A's out of Vegas and over to Juarez or Mexico City.
Tijuana. They can't be worse, right? I mean, the Tijuana Athletics.
they got, I love it. It should happen. It should happen. Anyway, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Take care.
Take care.